Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Stool podcast, a podcast for woodworkers and the maker community in general. This is episode number 1. My name is Robin Lewis from robinlewismakes.com. I'm joined by Joey Chalk from King Post Timberworks and Jordan Crawford from Periodic Furniture Studio. We live stream this recording every Thursday evening at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time or UTC plus 10. Or you can watch it or listen to it later on YouTube, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. So at this stage, we would normally go into our weekly segment or we'd talk about the weekly topic. But what we thought we'd do is for our first episode, we'd just talk about who we are and what we do and maybe just introduce ourselves as a way of starting off this podcast because this is a new podcast.
Should we do what we're working on first or straight into the topic?
We can do that. I was going to start with who we are first and then move into that.
Fine.
Just so
that makes more sense.
Yeah, because then people know who we are and what we're doing. So yeah. So in that case, I might hand it over to you, Joey, and give us a bit of a story of where Joey Chalk came from.
Alrighty, everyone. Right, so I am Joey. I'm third generation woodworker person. Granddad was a furniture maker, made, I've got a couple of pieces of his furniture and he used to make rowing skiffs as well out of plywood in the 30s. My dad's a builder, my brother's a builder, my uncle's a builder. People work with wood. So I guess I really got into woodworking when I was 13. I started making my own skateboards, mainly because they were too expensive and I kept breaking them all the time. So with a bit of help from Dad, loaned me some cash and bought some veneers, some maple veneers from Canada, I think it was. Made a press some boards, worked out how hard they were to make. And I got to the point pretty quick, probably within 2 years. So by the time I was in the middle of high school, I was earning a good amount of money selling skateboards to local skate shops. And so that was a pretty big introduction into quality control and how fussy customers can be. Especially when you're just going to throw something at a piece of concrete. The minute you walk out the door, people were crazy fussy. So what happened after that? After school, I got into building because that was the family trade. So all through high school, I would spend holidays working on building site with Dad. And so pretty much by the time I finished school, I was pretty capable. I could pretty much build a house from 17, 18. So I continued working with him for a few years. He ended up shifting to Australia for a little while. So I needed some work. So I started my own building company and did that for a couple of years. And ended up with 4 builders full time, which was pretty crazy, pretty stressful. And the stress really got to me. And I one day ended up being rushed into hospital with appendicitis, which turned out to be a big fat cancerous tumor on my appendix.
Oh, jeez.
So that was a fun week. And so then I think 10 days later, they went back in and took half of my large bowel out and a bunch of other guts. And some chemo for 6 months, which was not so much fun. And that's when I really decided I knew I'd always been interested in furniture making and just custom making awesome stuff. But that's when I was like, well, I've got all this time, got 6 months of chemo. Let's go and sit in a workshop and see what I can come up with. So I think the first project I made was a guitar, an acoustic guitar, made every piece. I think the only thing I bought I bought the nut and the bridge, and pretty much everything else I made from scratch, which was ridiculous. There's no way I could have been making anything like that.
Yeah, because guitars are, yeah, I mean, that's precision stuff, isn't it? Well, it's supposed to be.
It's precision, but I mean, there's so much more to it. Like when I spent a grand total of 2 or 3 hours researching how to make a guitar, and then I was like, right, go buy some maple, and I'm going to make a maple guitar. So that was, I was so above my head with what I needed to be able to do. But I have a thing that looks like a guitar, and it almost sounds like one. What I know now about how they make them, I don't think I would try one for a while yet. But
and I guess especially because now you're at the stage where you know what quality is, so your guitar would need to be up to that standard. So it's a different ballgame now.
So. Yeah, I think so. To me, like, I'm actually now would look at a guitar job as, I don't really care what it looks like, it's what it sounds like. And while the guitars are things that you handle and they should feel nice and look nice, I think if it doesn't sound good but looks nice, there's no point. So I'd much rather whatever I make,
that's very true,
sound really cool and look like a piece of crap. And I think that's what makes really good guitar makers really good, is that they sound really good and they look really good as well. There's two different things, I think, happening at the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah, and from there, pretty much, I went straight into a Maloof style rocking chair, which again is ridiculous. I actually have that chair. The first chair I ever made was a Maloof style rocking chair. Building client, they wanted it in their shop. It was going into a clothing store, and I said, yeah, sure, I'll make you a rocking chair. And they just closed their shop down like last year and offered me if I wanted it back, and I was like, yep. And so that's sitting in my bedroom now, so that's pretty cool to have that. It's terrible. I can't believe I would do a lot of things differently, but I think for my first go, it wasn't too bad. And again, ridiculous going into a Maloof rocking chair for your second project. That's but at the time, I think I was like, I really felt like I didn't have much time left. I'm still on chemo, and I'm just like, I've got to get these like dream projects out, just get them done. And at a certain point, I still feel that way a little bit. Not that, oh my God, I'm going to die tomorrow, but you never know what's coming down the track. And so just get into it, start making stuff, because otherwise, what are you waiting for? So,
which is interesting. And I'm sure we'll touch on this topic in one of the future episodes where we talk about that whole, making this a thing on YouTube, but that whole get started, just do it. It's like is one of the mantras of everyone on this website.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a shame that I needed such a big wake-up call, and I guess a lot of people probably need a similar thing, and it's a shame. I would like to be able to think that me just telling people just do it. If you need to do what you need to do, go get a piece of wood or steel or whatever it is and start joining it together. So. Right, where was I?
So we've made a guitar in an overly complicated shape.
Yeah, and then so I had a few projects come up from some family, my father-in-law, and somehow, I don't even remember who the clients were, but by the time my 6 months of chemo was up, I had two clients, jobs booked in. It was like a little buffet side table and something else. Oh, I actually think one of them was a teak outdoor table. It's ridiculous again. So that was it. I said, okay, I'll do these jobs. And then next thing you know, there's another order, someone else emailing, and I'm like, okay, I better get a website going and rebrand and all this kind of things. And suddenly I've got a business, and making stuff and I'm trying to work out how to make stuff. I think that was, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, so that transition into becoming a business was a very organic process for you. It wasn't like you woke up one morning and said, I'm gonna be a woodworker and started learning. You had already gone 75% of the way.
To a certain point, there was a conversation at some point when me and my wife sat down and said, I think I should just try this. I'm not sure where that was in the timeline, but I remember we're saying, I think we just try it. We don't have many expenses at the moment because I had to sell the house. And so we were living with my wife's parents. And so we were like stuffed in a room, got a garage workshop. Let's just give it a go. We've got nothing to lose at this point. Mm-hmm. And once we realized that there's money to be made, okay, we can probably reduce our reduce our expenses. You know, we don't need to go to the movies twice a week. You know, all these kinds of things, and make it work and have more fun doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, it's a bit of a windy road.
Yeah. All right. So after you started doing this full time, is the rest just metaphorical history?
Let's see. I made a wee list. Okay, so when I moved into this workshop, which you can see if you are watching, we bought this workshop outright. When I got cancer, I got a payout for my life insurance. So I think maybe some people have a perception that I have all this money from rich from making furniture. Yeah. It's not really the case. I was given a whole crap load of money, and from that we bought this workshop and bought enough tools to get me going, decent sized tools, and spent some money on a website and all these kinds of things. So it was enough of a bump to get me to a point where we could start. So when we moved into this workshop, I had a few jobs pretty much straight away. And I think one of the first jobs, and here is on one of my first videos, which is the shaker style furniture videos, very early, terrible videos. And the reason I made, so how do I backtrack? I started filming my work as a way of showing clients what goes into making a good piece of furniture. And what I would do is film it, edit it together, and when I deliver a piece, I would give it to the client and say, look at this. If you want to watch, you can see your piece being made. But the best part of it was that I could show potential clients, you want this thing? Yeah, cool. Look at this. Look how much work it takes to make this thing.
Yeah, and it's not just slap, screw.
That's right. Yeah. And so now when you see the price, it's going to be, it's kind of building them up to the price. That's how I felt. I actually don't think my prices are that expensive now. At the time, I was thinking, $2,000-3,000 for a dining table. Like, oh my God, that's so much. But it's actually fairly reasonable. So
yeah.
When you see what's on the market now, certainly. And then someone told me about YouTube and said, hey, why don't you put your videos on YouTube? And my biggest reason for not doing that was I didn't want to deal with the haters. I just thought all I'm going to get is awful feedback, and I don't know that I can deal with it kind of mentally. So, but I got over that hurdle for some, I don't even know why. It took me a long time to push kind of send on that one. And next thing you know, videos are being watched, and I just kept making them because I actually enjoy the process of making videos. So, and if people get something out of that, learn a little tip here and there, that's my job done, I guess. So that's where I am now. I'm just flat out. I have one employee who works part-time, full-time, part-time. So he works half days. And we're just flat out with jobs at the moment.
And I guess the fact that business is picking up is obviously always good, because Yeah, it keeps you doing it. I know there's a lot of people out there who are trying to do this full time and are really struggling. So
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
I guess you're quite fortunate with that. And that's a perfect segue then to move over to Mr. Jordan Crawford, because Jordan's in the same boat as Joey, doing it full time. But I'll let you take over, Jordan, and bring everyone up to speed on how you got there.
Yeah, so basically who I am is Jordan Crawford, as Robin said, and what I am is a furniture maker in Perth, Western Australia, so other end of the country, to Rob. And yeah, I've been doing this for about 2 years full time, but it's not the first time I've attempted to do it full time, which I'll get into a little bit. On top of that, I also run a YouTube channel like both of these guys do, which is George's Woodshop. And that's kind of developed more into a documentation channel of what client builds I'm working on now, or what commissions and things are coming up, more than the conventional how-to thing that it did start out as. Background-wise, I started, I mean, it's a bit all over the place, but I started out in live theatre, which is a bit different because it was building sets which are, 10 meters tall or several stories high, and it's definitely more general carpentry than it is furniture making. But it was still a very hands-on approach to the art of woodworking. So for the 7-8 years, I was building and repairing sets or removing sets, doing things like the automation and the rigging, and doing massive amounts of things that you wouldn't consider normal was my day-to-day life, but that obviously added up to things like 70-hour weeks was my normal, and a 90-hour work week wasn't that uncommon, and it just really did take it out of you. But from that job did come a lot of benefits, because it came with a lot of travel. Right. So I got to see a lot of places, and I got to travel all around Australia, all around New Zealand. I got to go to all these really unique places, which all had similar people like me working, but we all have our own methods and techniques. And through these people I met is where I kind of gained a lot of these less conventional methods that I like to use. But that's more the carpentry side of things, which I don't do that much of anymore.
Would you travel? Sorry to interrupt. Would you travel with the theatre company as the set carpenter, or some other role?
Generally speaking, when I was touring, you tour as a bit of a jack of all trades if you're touring with a show, because you'll go into the venue or onto the site, and you'll have a team who's locals. But my position was, the carpenter, or the staging guy is the title that we're given, mechanist. Right. But yeah, so generally if it was an opera, I'd be repairing the set and getting the locals to put it together according to the Bible, which is what we call the piece of paper which tells you how to put it all together, and all that sort of stuff.
Cool.
Most recently, I've been with a puppet show for 3 years, which doesn't sound that exciting, but it's a whole lot of automation and heavy robotics, which is an entirely different ballgame, but keeps you interesting.
Is that a particularly regulated, because you talk about that Bible, is that particularly regulated, as in liability is just a massive concern for everyone?
Not really. It's more so if, say that I'm the head mechanist or the head staging guy, and I get hit by a bus, the show has to go on. So there has to happen. So there has to be documentation there that means that, Rob, if you're the guy that's in the next venue, you can read this, and it will take you 25 hours instead of 2 hours, but it will get done.
Yeah.
So it's more along that line of things, more than a liability. And in a lot of the bigger things, like if you look at shows with a lot of rigging, these are binders and binders. But you know, they're shows which were above me generally. I guess more specifically with my background with woodworking and furniture, straight out of school, I studied furniture and 3D product design. That was kind of my finding the path of furniture making. On top of that, I also studied to become a teacher of design technologies, which is what we call shop class on this side of the pond. I don't know if it's universal, but I never finished that degree because I kind of knew that teaching a class where most of the students take it as a slack-off class and didn't really put 100% into it would just totally destroy me, because it is something that I love doing and I love sharing it, but if you're not getting a return from your students, it's just got to be so tough, and it wasn't my cup of tea.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I did several smaller gigs, just building stuff here and there, but yeah, I bought a sawmill.
Oh, wow.
And then, so at the same time as buying the sawmill, I rented a factory, which was about an hour and a half away from where I am now. That lasted all of 6 months because my lovely neighbor made enemies with the local bikies.
Oh, God.
And he got torched and cars got burnt out in the car park. And
Jeez.
needless to say, it wasn't a very comfortable spot for me to be. So that was my first venture, closed down pretty quickly.
You had to sell the sawmill?
I've still got the sawmill, but it's been in storage since then.
Was it a swing arm or a bandsaw?
Just a bandsaw.
Yeah, cool.
But I mean, the thing with it is I've still got stock on my shelves at the factory here, which is from that little venture. So it was worthwhile.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, other than that, I've been in this factory for I've been doing it full time for 2 years. I've been in this factory for just over a year. And I guess work-wise, the workshop is fully set up for solid timber furniture. I'm not a cabinet shop. I haven't got very many things in place for processing sheet goods. I mean, I have a panel saw and a wide belt sander, which is known for cabinet stuff, but I don't use it in that way. But yeah, my interest is in solid furniture, and that's generally what I keep doing. Yeah. And
you've just gone into having some kind of store now, like a walk-in store?
Yeah, so I've closed off the front section of my shop, so probably only about 15 square meters. And that has given me a spot to display my smaller items, which I can make if I'm ever quiet,
cool.
Which doesn't happen that often. And every time it looks like I am quiet, someone tends to walk in the door needing something yesterday.
You're right.
As is what's happened this week twice. But it just gives me a good spot to stock up on small items. If I'm quiet, I have something to work towards in the workshop here. And if I'm selling at market stalls and things like that, it also gives people a welcome storefront to come into and not feel so worried about coming into a factory. I find that my clients that do come in for face-to-face meetings actually do quite appreciate having that spot to come in, and I can give them a few examples of finishes, a few different like edge profiles in particular. So I have 2 different dining tables out there. That's one with a round over, one with a nice machined edge. And it just gives, you know, the clients a good visualization of what sort of things I can offer. It is annoying though, because it does take away from workshop space, which I mean I've got plenty of compared to a lot of these guys out there, but you know, as soon as you have the space, you will fill it.
Yeah, I'm the same. I had to put a little smoko room into my workshop, and it's a corner that I want.
Yeah. You think it's a great idea until a few weeks after you've done it.
Yeah.
And you start realizing how valuable that space was.
Yep.
Like I've just finished putting in a finishing room, which is basically boxed in 3/4 of my mezzanine.
Right.
And it's a great space to have. It means I've been spraying all day today, and I've been machining outside. And, you know, my finishes are beautiful. But I've realized how much space under there I could have used for everything else.
Yeah.
But, you know.
I do remember when you moved into that shop. So that was a couple of years ago, you say? I remember
about a year ago, yeah.
That was all part of the vlog. And I remember seeing the shop then and looking at it, because you took a bit of a break and then you came back and you did a bit of a tour of the shop and all the changes. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, that shop got very small very quickly.
It looked so big when I moved in.
Yeah.
It's nothing but tight now, I'd say.
Yeah. Talking
Robin.
about, well, just one last thing, talking about the YouTube side of things. What got you into filming and doing YouTube? Because, you know, obviously we've talked about your business side of it, but what got you started on YouTube?
You know, it's actually similar to Joey in some regards anyway. So when I first started it, it was more documenting my progress and my process, both of those things, and to actually have an archive of things I've done. When I first started my YouTube channel, I didn't have the end game in sight of actually being a full-time factory owner and doing this as my career, because I was quite heavily involved in theatre life still, and I loved that still. So it was more of a just keeping track of things and sharing it with people that might have been interested. And then it's kind of a contagious, well, not contagious, but infectious is probably the better word, because you do it and then you get one video that gets a lot of views, or even if you're a small channel just starting out and you get that first video that gets 1,000 views, I still remember the feeling you get of being, oh wow, a lot of people have seen this.
Yeah.
And it just makes you want to keep kind of doing it. And then the connection I have with YouTube and this workplace, I mean, my YouTube is not what I've called my factory. I've tried to keep the two a little bit separate because I mean, it's personal reasons, but I like to separate them. But it's been quite a driving force of my success here, because I've never had to advertise, yet I'm very, very rarely without work. And if I haven't got work, I have this weird knack of people just showing up, needing something done.
Yep.
So it tends to happen when I'm stressed about, oh, I haven't got anything on next week, and then a last minute order will come in.
Yep.
And then I ask people, oh, so how'd you hear about me? And they've actually seen me on YouTube, and they've Googled George Woodshop, and they found my trading name of Periodic Furniture through different revenues. So
yeah, cool.
It's an important thing for me to keep going with. But
yeah, well, it's amazing. All the people, and obviously this is just within our little community, but all of the people that I talk to, as soon as I mention George Woodshop, oh yeah, I know what George Woodshop. I watch it all the time. Obviously don't know you from Bar Soap, but you've got that presence online as being one of the bigger players. And I think because you've been doing this the longest out of the three of us, you've got that reputation now. So I can imagine absolutely that must work pretty well in your favor.
Yeah, it's quite a funny thing actually. I've got a funny story about. I won't say who this artist was, but I used to tour with this individual comedian. If he watches this, he'll know who he is. But I was touring with him, and he's quite a big-headed, strong person, strong opinion on himself. And we're in an airport over East, and he loves it when people come up to him and ask for a handshake or a photo or a selfie. And we're walking through this airport, and this person comes up behind us and says, "Excuse me." And he gets all ready for the photo, and he's like, gets himself ready. And I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" "Are you Jordan from George Woodshop?" Yeah, I am. How are you, mate? Yeah, God. Just had a good chat with him, and this guy just got deflated to just put him in his place. But yeah, that's probably my proudest moment of my
That's very cool.
Australian work workplace recognition.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, yeah. Joey and I, when we were talking earlier, we were saying that we really want to tap into the business side of things as a conversation later on. And you and I have spoken very briefly about the markets, and I'm really keen to get into some more information on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I am someone who's just starting what you guys are now veterans in. I'm just getting into this game. But my story goes back, let's go back probably about 10 years. So I'm originally from South Africa. I lived in South Africa until I was about 24. Then I moved to London, where I met heaps of Kiwis and Aussies, and you guys just convinced me to move over here. That's a bit of a lie, but yeah. Myself and my then girlfriend, we spent a lot of time in London. It was great. And our visa expired. So the next place that we could move to was Australia. So one thing with the South African passport is it's very hard to go anywhere. That passport doesn't give us access to very many places. Her family lived in Australia, so it seemed like the easy move, and that brought us over here. So we got to Adelaide in 2013, and that was when I bought my first home. And I'd always been sort of disinterested with DIY. You know, Dad would always show me what he was doing, and as a teenager, I didn't care. I just wanted to go out and party with my mates. And I bought my first home, and suddenly I thought, I don't know anything. Like I don't know how any of this works. And it obviously now you look at it, and it's all pretty basic stuff. But at the time, I didn't know what was going on. So obviously, the first thing I did was jump onto the internet or YouTube at the time. And I remember just being so fascinated by everything that was there. Like you could search for anything and you'd find it on YouTube. And that sort of, you get into that binge watching cycle, and you get stuck into this loop, and you're just watching. And it was through that process that I realized, I discovered this whole YouTube community. And at that time, I remember thinking, I want a piece of this. It's not like I'm just going to film something and see what happens. Like I wanted to be, I wanted to be Bob Claggett or the Rester. And one of the reasons for that is I've grown up my whole life playing in bands. So I've been on stage since the age of 15.
Yep.
So I've always, that entertainment lifestyle has always just been something that I'm drawn to. And then it was around 2013, 2014, I started a small company filming music videos for low budget musicians, which I really enjoyed. I've always just enjoyed the film side of things. So when I found this whole community on YouTube, it was just this perfect like merging of my two favorite things, which was one being on stage and entertaining, and the other filming. And now I had this perfect topic or thing that I could film. So I got into it immediately from day one. I was doing one video a week, trying to get it going. It took me a long time to have the success. Well, the relative success that you guys are having. I only got my first real big video a year after I'd started. So I went from getting 100, 200 views on a video to then suddenly, wow, I got this video which just went bananas. And so it was a real hard slog, but because I enjoyed it, because I enjoyed the process, it didn't bother me. I was doing what I enjoyed. I got into the DIY side of things, loved it, and I was filming it so I could make these short films. So it was really cool. Anyway, so really got stuck into the YouTube side of it, filming all of my DIY projects, and through that I discovered woodworking, because I think DIY and woodworking obviously is quite related. You end up with a shed and you want to do something in that shed, and you've got your electronics, metalwork, woodworking, like those are your three things. And so I just got into the woodworking thing a bit more because I realized that was quite enjoyable. And now I've got to the stage where this is a new house that I bought in July of this year. there's so much work that needs to be done in this house, but I'm looking at my workshop behind me and I'm going, oh, but I could just make one more table. And so I'm having to pull myself away from the workshop and say, no, you need to get back to the DIY side of things. So I've got to the point now where I want to make the woodworking my primary focus, as with Joey and Jordan. So this year I registered a company. I've made a few pieces of furniture, which I'm now trying to sell. As I mentioned, Jordan and I spoke recently about getting it to market. So I'm basically at the beginning stage, the early stages of where the other two are trying to break into their market. So right now I would consider myself a woodworker YouTuber, but yeah, I'm trying to get to that point where
you're on
I'm
the
going to
road.
make my first sale.
Yeah, cool.
So this Sunday, I have someone coming around to look at a table that I put up for sale.
Is that the Jarrow one?
No. So this is an older one. It's a live edge coffee table. It's quite nice. I don't particularly like it, so I'm happy to say take it.
Don't tell them that though.
So the price is
like they're stealing it from you.
Yeah. So the price, like it's horribly underpriced.
Right.
But as I say, I don't like it. It's a foot in the door. You know, they may come back as a return customer. So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully this Sunday I'll have invoice 0001.
Some pocket money.
Yeah, I remember invoice 0001.
Yeah,
it was rough.
So yeah, and then that brings us to where we are today. And I think the three of us are all in agreement that we are trying to do YouTube a little bit more. We'll make it a little bit more of a full-time gig, and that's why we've decided to do this podcast.
Yeah,
yep, pretty much.
Take it a bit more seriously, for my standpoint.
Yeah.
And before putting this podcast together, I went online and did a bit of searching to see who in Australia was doing something similar to this, and I couldn't find anything. Now, it could be out there, and if it is out there, obviously I mean no disrespect, but I couldn't find a real solid, Making It, Wood Talk, or Crafted Podcast, all of those guys. I couldn't find one like that here in Australia. And not to make this an Australian podcast, it's not, but we have our own little community. And I should probably say when I talk about Australia, I'm kind of just pulling Australia and New Zealand in together. So our little community on this corner of the globe, we don't have anything yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're well overdue for some representation on the main stage. So
yeah, we lag behind.
Yeah,
but we're gonna fix it.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that's the idea.
Too late, but that's okay.
Yeah. Well, I was down at Adelaide Maker Fair a couple of weeks ago, and I was amazed at the excitement on these people's faces at all these stalls. And having grown up in bands and going to watch bands and going to festivals, it was a different level of excitement. And so that whole maker scene, it's here. It just needs to be almost unified or
yeah, sure.
together.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, what we might do, I don't know if obviously no one's said anything in the chat, so I don't know if anyone is watching.
No, probably us breaking stream wasn't a good start.
Yeah. But this was the first.
In there, so that's something.
Yeah. I was trying to talk and do this, and so we got there in the end. But as I said earlier, this was the first episode, so it was more of a trial run than anything. So
yep.
Okay, so
We've got coffee, yeah. There we go.
So we've got one person.
Good. So are we going to talk about anything about woodworking, or are we going to call it now?
Okay. So that's going to be the next thing. So what I want to do is I really want to mention two different topics. One is what we're working on at the moment.
Yep.
And the second is who we are watching at the moment. So if you want to head us off there, Joe.
All right. We'll do this pretty quick because I guess we're going it's dragging on. Right. I've got a bunch of work on. I've made a wee list. I'm just started on a American cherry Buddhist altar. which is
That's
interesting.
very interesting.
Completely out of my wheelhouse. I had to ask the client a lot of questions. And there's lots of specific measurements, or should I say, it seems like there's lots of numbers they don't want to be incorporated into the design. So I gave them the design with lots of measurements, and then I had to tweak a few things by a couple of millimeters here, 10 millimeters here. So the numbers were good numbers as far as I can work out. So it did play with proportions. It's a bit weird, but that's what it is. I've got some giant barn doors on the go, 2.7 by 1.2 barn doors. They're 60 mil thick. It's crazy. Can't move them, can't lift them.
Yeah.
What have I got? Oh, I'm meant to be starting last year, I don't know if you remember, I did what do they call it? A cube box. I just made this random box out of my scraps from the previous year, and I gave it away. I'm making another complicated box, and now I've stalled on that, and I'm trying to get my head back into it. I'm going to give that away as well, but I need to finish it. I just finished a Sapelli door, which some people may have seen.
If you haven't, go and check out Joey's door and tell him what you think.
Yeah. Tell me that I shouldn't have painted the door.
It's a good color, though.
Yeah. White's good, man. White's white.
Keeps it cool.
I will say, I guess, how do I say this politely? If you want a cheap door, go buy a cheap door. But if you want a good door that's going to last forever, get me to make it, and I don't care if you want it painted. At least it's going to last forever.
Yeah, that's very true.
That's what I'll say. I'll do my what I'm watching now as well, just because I'm talking. Dorian Bracht. I'm not sure how the pronunciation is. He's a German guy. He's probably in a similar situation to me and Jordan. I think he works in a joinery shop, furniture shop. But he has a series on Japanese joints that he's been doing, and they're outrageous. You need to go see how crazy talented and patient this guy is. He's a really good dude. We've been chatting a little bit on his videos, and he's made a couple of furniture pieces as well on his YouTube channel. So go check him out, subscribe, do cool things.
Cool.
Yep.
So I am basically done on a barbecue cart. So that's what I was working on this week. This is a thing for me. I'm not planning on putting it up for sale. It's just a relatively inexpensive cart that I can put next to my barbecue with a nice mobile hard wood top. And it was more of the rest of the leg assembly is all made out of pine, so it was about getting it out fairly quick, but it was just a nice way for me to practice. So that video I should have out Sunday, probably Sunday night, which I'm quite excited about, because it actually, for a pine piece of furniture, it actually turned out better than I was expecting, which is pretty cool. And in terms of what I'm watching, Badger's Workshop. He's a Badger's Workshop, or Badger, I think it's Badger's.
Oh, yeah.
Badger Workshop.
Yeah, Badger's Workshop.
Yeah, right. So I've been watching him for a while, and he's got some pretty cool stuff. But in his most recent video, he made one of these like I don't know what you'd call it. There's a special word for it, I can't remember, but it's basically like a wooden caravan. And he made one not too long ago, and I just got the impression that he was doing this for himself, like as a little project. But it turns out that he's actually selling these. And in his most recent one, it's this little cart that you'd hook up to your trailer, and he's made one for a customer that's just entirely a bathroom. Anyway, it sounds fairly simple, but
was it like one of those teardrop style trailers, like a small but wooden?
Similar, but it's got a more antique feel. So it's more traditional. The joinery, the construction. So like teardrops. I think they are cool, but this to me is something different. Anyway, he's put out a video recently of a new one that he's made, and I just, from a novice builder's perspective, it's very interesting watching these small little houses or buildings come together. So Badger's Workshop, check it out. These Ask You a Few videos have been good. Cool. All right. Well, that was the first episode of the Shop Stool podcast, hosted by myself, Robin Lewis from Robin Lewis Makes, Joey Chalk from King Post Timberworks, and John Crawford from Periodics Furniture Studio.
Okay.
Oh, there he is.
He's
No.
doing his best Robocop impersonation.
All right, we have to call it.
Yeah, so we will be broadcasting this every Thursday at this time. So share and share alike, tell your friends, and we hope to see you next week. And what we will do is get more involved in the chat next week as well. So yeah.
I don't see.
All right, I'm not quite sure what's going on there, Jordan. Are you back? No. Okay. All right, guys. Thanks very much, and we'll talk to you again.
So yeah.